Good morning, Tampa Bay. What's going on? Welcome to a Monday edition, July 25th. Channelside in the morning, live on the Channelside Sports Network. You know me, I am Danny. I appreciate everybody who is tuning in right now. If this is your first time tuning in, hopefully I can entice you. Hopefully you enjoy the show a little bit. And hopefully we talk about topics, we talk about headlines that interest our local Tampa Bay audience. We've got a decent amount of stuff to unpack today. Of course, the MLB All-Star or MLB All-Star, the MLB Hall of Fame inductees took place last night. Of course, they were headed by David Ortiz, who, interestingly enough, was the first designated hitter to be a first ballot baseball Hall of Famer, which is kind of crazy to me. Buccaneers training camp opens on Wednesday. Alternate helmets are announced. Obviously, unfortunately, not for the Bucs yet. We know that those are coming next season, but we're going to talk about the helmets, kind of rank them. I guess I'll rank them. Tune in, definitely. Let us know on the Twitter. I know a lot of you appreciate everybody that's joining in on Twitter right now, which is quite a few of you guys. So I definitely appreciate that. If you are on the YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. We do this live every weekday morning from 8 to 9. Big things coming, big changes coming in the future. Hopefully some changes are coming for the Florida Gators because they've got a lot more 4- and 5-star recruits than 2- and 3-star recruits, especially over the last 4 years, but they can't quite seem to make the turn and come back to the Florida Gators that we're all used to. AL East, of course, is kind of still topsy-turvy, peaks and valleys all over the place, which creates a hell of a lot of fun for the fan, but it's also kind of nerve-wracking when your team is one of those teams that is in that topsy-turvy roller coaster ride for the rest of the season, as it appears. And then I'm going to talk all about where I strongly believe the Orlando Magic are going to find themselves this season and where they are. How do I want to phrase it? Where we think that their expectations are realistic expectations. Not NBA championship contenders. Realistic expectations, as I said. But nonetheless, I'm going to start with this anyway, because this is definitely this is a much more fun topic. We're going to talk about the NFL alternate helmets for this season. Of course, we know the 8 that are announced: the Carolina Panthers, Houston Texans, New York Jets, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Atlanta Falcons, New Orleans Saints, Philadelphia Eagles, and of course the Dallas Cowboys. For me, when I'm tuning in and I'm looking at these helmets, right, they're all pretty cool in their own way. I especially like the battle red of the Houston Texans. I think that's kind of cool, just because that's not something we're used to. The Panthers is pretty cool. The blackout with just the outline of the Panther. That one's pretty cool as well. I think for me, it's a toss up between the all white Cincinnati Bengals helmet. And I know I'm going to catch a lot of flack for this, but the retro Dallas Cowboy helmet, where it's kind of mixed with the stripe there. For me, there's just something about the Dallas Cowboy helmet that really resonates with me, man. Maybe it's because my grandmother was a huge Dallas Cowboy fan. Maybe that's what it was, but there's just something about that all white helmet with the blue star that really just hits. For those tuning in, I appreciate it. Let me know which helmet you like the best, which helmets you think are the best and the worst. I gotta go. If I'm gonna rank these bad boys, I gotta go with the Dallas Cowboys at number 1. I have to. before the Cowboys announced that this was going to be the alternate helmet, it was by far the Cincinnati Bengals. I think that those all white Bengal uniforms are fantastic. And oh no, it's a zebra. Miss me with that. A simple Google search will say that you're an idiot. A simple Google search will say that there are such things as white Bengal tigers. And maybe it's because I really enjoy lions and tigers, like the actual animals, lions and tigers in sports as well. But maybe it's because I actually enjoy the animals. There are white Bengal tigers in the world. So I'm going to go Dallas, Cincy. I really think that battle red Houston Texans helmet is pretty tough. So I'm going to have to put that at number 3, followed by the retro Atlanta Falcons. I think that red helmet, to me, that's something that, like, I'm an old school football fan when it comes down to it, right? And I really think that Corey says he hates the Saints ones. I look, the Saints one, are those supposed to be Mardi Gras beads? What exactly are we looking at on this Saints helmet? It is a regular New Orleans Saints helmet that has just replaced, like, I know that it's the black helmet. The black helmet is kind of cool, but their logo, for me, I'm just not a fan of I'm not a fan of the Saints logo, the Fleur de Lis. I'm not a fan of that. I don't think that that's like great looking. But the red Atlanta Falcons helmet, man, that really does it for me. Is because I'm a retro guy. I think about like Andre Rison, and I think about, guys from the early 90s, Deion Sanders rocking this helmet. Like those are the people that I envision in this helmet. The Eagles all black is cool, but it's I don't know. It's going to sound weird when I say that it's a little too plain for me when I'm talking about, the Dallas Cowboys with an all white helmet and a blue star is the number 1 helmet. But I think that there's something missing from the Eagles helmet, at least from this picture. I haven't really looked at everything, but I think that there's definitely something missing. Bengals, Panthers. I agree with that to an extent. I thought the Bengals were number 1. The Cowboys, there's just something about that. Like, I owned a Marion Barber Thanksgiving jersey. Like, I know that, I'm a Bucks fan, I'm a Lions fan, but that doesn't mean that I just like regulate myself to owning specific teams' jerseys, right? Like, I wear jerseys of my favorite players. I wear retro, like the Mitchell and Ness throwbacks. Like that's what I do. I'm bringing jerseys are coming back, and I'm going to bring them back. God damn it. That's that's the way that I see it. So for me, I'm going to go Cowboys, Bengals, Texans, Falcons, Panthers, Eagles, Jets, and Saints. I think the Jets helmets are terrible. I really do. But not to be outdone by the Saints. I don't understand what the dots are where the stripe is supposed to go. I really don't. Like I said, for me, I feel like they're Mardi Gras beads. I don't know if they are supposed to be Mardi Gras beads. Maybe they are. I really don't know. But I'm excited. I really wish that the Buccaneers were wearing the creamsicles this year. Especially because this is probably going to be Tom Brady's last season. And it would have just been cool to see him wear some sort of creamsicle, whether it, and the Bucco Bruce logo. Because you remember when he signed and people started remaking the Bucco Bruce logo with Tom Brady's face. And like, I just think that whole thing would have been pretty cool to see, like, kind of come full circle. And, I guess you can't, never say never. Tom Brady may be back next season, but I don't know. I know he's year to year. He's still under contract with us, but there's just there's so many things that, like, I don't know. I guess we'll figure it out. Yeah, it is definitely unfortunate that the Bucks missed the deadline to submit them. I guess you know what though. To be fair, we were too busy building a Super Bowl contender, because if we're gonna go back and we're gonna look at all the teams that have actually released them outside of the Bengals, nah. Falcons, no. Saints, no. Cowboys, probably not. Jets, absolutely not. Texans, haha, funny. Like so the Buccaneers had, they had bigger fish to fry when it came to doing this. And I'm okay with it. Training camp opens up on Wednesday for the Buccaneers, so we're going to, we'll talk about that extensively. Thursday and Friday, things that we've seen at training camp. And of course, we'll have some Channelside Sports representation at training camp in the latter stage of this week, which is pretty cool. It won't be me. I don't like to travel, but I also work. So yeah, there's that too. I'm excited for training camp. Is this the most stacked roster that the Buccaneers have ever had, like as a whole? And I'm talking about, when you look at running back, because yeah, I know we once had Warwick Dunn and Mike Allstott, but Mike Allstott was always classified realistically as a fullback, halfback. I think that this might be the most stacked roster overall as a whole that the Buccaneers have ever had. So this is really going to shape up to be a really fun training camp. Especially with the addition of Kyle Rudolph to the team now, because that was the biggest question mark from all sources, is what are the Buccaneers going to do when it comes down to the tight end position now that Rob Gronkowski is gone? We know, look, the people that have been around Bucs Nation know who Cameron Brate is, but we don't know like how extensively good or effective he can be, just because his sample size has still been small, right? He's always split time with OJ Howard. He's always split time with Rob Gronkowski. Outside of injuries, like Cameron Brate has never been like the guy. Could he be the guy? I think he could be the guy. I think that Cameron Brate is definitely somebody that you can depend on. Of course, Cade Otton finally signed his 4-year rookie deal. I don't know why we announced these rookie deals. Like, oh, he finally signed. Okay, that's cool. I appreciate it. Like, we know that, like, how many rookies are not going to sign a deal and not going to, to me, that's just like it's like a redundancy of, hey, we signed our rookie. No shit. That's how that works. Like, there's not going to be a guy that you draft that goes, hey, thanks, but I'm pretty sure that I don't want to play. No, I don't. You know what? I don't want to sign a contract. I didn't graduate college. I'm good. I don't want to do this. Like, that's not going to happen. So when we announce like, oh yeah, rookies are signed, and people are like, yeah, finally. Yeah, it's great. I guess. Like, what are we getting excited about for the rookie contract signings? But yeah, the tight end position I think is going to be a fun battle. I know if you there's a couple different websites that you read where like Sean Murphy Bunting, like these guys have already lost their job. Like those are going to be fun battles. Don't get me wrong. Like the secondary of the Buccaneers is going to be fun to watch. Man, like there's going to be a lot of fun battles, and like I said, we'll have some representation there in the latter stage of the week, so we'll have that covered, and we're going to start churning out content like butter, baby. Of course, we've got our newest show lined up. So now not only do we have our pop culture show, Please Rewind, we also have False Finish, which is of course hosted by Gene Thomas and Corey Hayes, which will be coming to you soon. Make sure you follow False Finish CSN. That's right, False Finish CSN. Follow them on Twitter. They do a lot of live tweeting during events, and yeah, it's a hell of a lot of fun. As you see, Corey up in the comments, up in the chat right now. Jumping in there. ROH had a fantastic pay-per-view over the weekend as well. So SummerSlam's coming up. Corey's birthday's coming up. We got a lot of good stuff and big things coming up over here at Channelside Sports. And yeah, Corey will be at SummerSlam. You're going to want to follow the Twitter because Corey's going to be live on hand at SummerSlam. So you're definitely going to want to make sure. Raw's at MSG tonight. There's so many big things going on in professional wrestling. So hopefully you're a professional wrestling fan. If you're not, follow False Finish anyway. And I guarantee you will become a professional wrestling fan. That is for damn sure. Baseball Hall of Fame last night. I touched on this at the beginning of the show. As you guys who know me know that I'm not like a huge baseball fan, right? Like I'll follow baseball in the late part of the season. Like September is when I start getting interested and I start tuning in, going, okay, yeah, baseball now is starting to get interesting to me because the season's just too damn long. It really, like 160 plus games to me is I can't do it. It's way too freaking long for me to watch and enjoy a baseball season when there's just so much baseball. Like, yeah, the NBA season is 80 games, 82 games. The hockey season is long, but those are such fast. They're fast sports outside of like the last 30 seconds of a basketball game, but they're fast sports overall. And they're just, for me, they're easier to watch. I've watched one Detroit Tigers season and one Tampa Bay Rays season. So like all 162 games. And I wanted to shoot myself in the face. I really did. Like, even if my team was in the running, Corey, like my team, when I watched the Detroit Tigers full season, that was the season where they ended up going to the World Series. Unfortunately, of course, they lost that season, but I watched every game when they were the best team in their division and they were constantly viewed as contenders. And it's so long of a season. But real quick, I feel like, we need to run through these names. Of course, we'll talk on David Ortiz here in a minute, but Tony Olivia, Jim Catt, Bud Fowler, Gil Hodges, Minnie Mignoso, and Buck O'Neill. Shout out to all of you guys. Like it's so. Some of these guys have been waiting for such a long time to get inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. And then, of course, you've got David Ortiz as the what is he? He's the 14th first ballot Hall of Famer since like 2015 or something like that to get inducted, which is awesome. And David Ortiz, I know that we're not Red Sox fans down here in Tampa, but man, David Ortiz used to just put on some shows, man. You remember the times where like when David Ortiz and Manny Ramirez were coming up to bat and it was like Manny'd be third, David be clean up, or it'd be vice versa. And you're just like, oh my gosh, like talk about a gauntlet. Talk about an actual, like, if there was ever a time to be afraid on the mound as a pitcher, that's one of those times for sure. Maybe like when you had Albert Bell and Frank Thomas together in Chicago, back in the mid 90s, or Griffey and A-Rod, but A-Rod didn't really turn it on in Seattle. He was good, but he didn't really necessarily like have it turned on. But there was a time where you would see David Ortiz come up to the plate or Manny Ramirez come up to the plate, and you knew that one of them was going to jack it. You knew that one of them was going to hit it, especially if it was late in the game and it was at home in Boston. You knew that one of those guys was hitting the ball over the green monster. And as a baseball fan, see, this is where it's fun for me is the way I'm wired is like, I'm an atmosphere person, right? Like maybe that's why it's hard for me to watch an entire season of baseball, because a lot of baseball fans aren't loud until September either. There's a lot of, baseball fans kind of sitting on their hands because the season is long. Fans will say that all the time on Twitter. Like that's always the biggest argument. Well, there's a long season. Well, it's a long season. I mean, it is a long season, but the more that we hammer it home that it's a long season, the longer the season feels, if you ask me. That's where I stand. That's where I see it and go, damn, guys, like it definitely is a long season. But yeah, excuse me. I'm almost over this cold. Almost. Ugh, I don't know. Um, man, I uh I definitely enjoyed watching David Ortiz though. And if you're a fan of baseball, you did as well. Did you like the Red Sox? Probably not. If you live in Tampa, where we are obviously marketed and broadcasted and honed in, you didn't like Boston. I don't like Boston as a team itself. I like players. Speaking of liking players, here's something that I found that was very interesting. College football on Fox Sports put this out, and these are teams that have signed more 4 and 5 star recruits than 2 and 3 star recruits over the last 4 recruiting classes. Of course, we've got Alabama, Ohio State, even Georgia now. Texas A&M kind of ran away with recruiting, especially over these last 2 seasons, which to me is very interesting. But here's one thing that I noticed, and this is a talking point for me, is if you look at some of these, well, let's use Penn State. Let's use the University of Miami, even the Florida Gators to an extent, right? These teams just haven't been great over the last handful of years. Miami hasn't been good in forever, right? Like Miami just hasn't been good in a long time. Ever since the Ponzi scheme came out, Miami kind of fell off the wayside. They fell off the wagon. So my question is, like, when I'm looking at these, and some of them do line up, but for the ones that don't line up, is like I look at it and go, okay, so are the people that are creating these recruiting rankings, this star system, are they being too generous with the ratings? Or are they failing once they get to the program? Like once a 4 or 5 star recruit, because if you're looking and you say, okay, so Florida has signed more 4 and 5 star recruits over the last 4 years than they have 2 and 3 star recruits. That's, to me, that spells like, okay, yeah, we should be a pretty damn good program, right? Like it's, to me, like that's where I don't understand it. And you go, okay, well, it's got to be a system, it's got to be a program, but also how many of these 4 and 5 star recruits do we actually see making a lot of noise when it comes to college football? Not a lot of them do. And that's where we talk about the translation between college football and the NFL all the time. And there is definitely a translation, there's a translation from when you go from high school to when you come to college. It's a hell of a lot easier. It's fairly easy to make a college or a high school football team, right? It's also, even if you go to a great school, a great high school, and then it's not, I have to mind my words because I know I'll piss some college football fans off, but it's not like overly difficult to make your college football program, especially if you're at a smaller school. Like if you're at a school like Missouri or Vanderbilt, you don't, it's not going to be as difficult to make that team as it is if you're at an Alabama or a Georgia or Ohio State or a Michigan or even Florida to an extent, right? Like it's not going to be that. And I get, we have storied programs that get the recruits, as Corey in the comments said. I totally understand that. Like players just want to go and say, hey, I went to this school. This is where I played. I played at the University of Alabama under Nick Saban, right? Like, and that totally makes sense to me. But when you're signing 4 and 5 star recruits to Alabama, you know that Alabama is going to be in contention. When you're signing 4 and 5 star recruits to Florida, where they currently stand, not so much. And we can all say that with conviction, because how many Florida fans are going, when are we coming back? Like, when are we going to be better? When are we going to be good again? Billy Napier has said, these things take time. Everybody wants to know, well, how long? Give me just a ballpark, would you? Like, we're sitting here going, all right, well, we're still waiting. There was one time, there was a time where Florida was, always in the national title picture, always sitting there at the top, always one of the better teams in the SEC. And now we've got the SEC network putting stuff out that's going, well, Florida's going to finish fourth in the SEC East, which is not good. That's not where you want to finish. You don't. Georgia, we know where Georgia's going to be. Georgia's going to be at the top. When you're finishing lower than Tennessee, Kentucky did pretty good in recruiting this season. Kentucky's program is kind of turning it on a little bit. But when you're talking about a Florida Gators team that's going to finish below Tennessee, that is an issue, because Tennessee is not a powerhouse team. The Volunteers are not a powerhouse team. Alabama, A&M, Nebraska, Ole Miss, the West is fine. The East, when you look at the East and you go, well, I mean, I can't argue with how they predict the season is going to finish. It's it's kind of scary to me. Are the Gators going to be in for another long season? It seems very likely that the Swamp is going to be in for another very long season. Corey says the Kentucky is going to win the SEC East. Hey, it's possible. I think that I really think that Georgia is not solidified, in my opinion, as the number one team in the SEC East. I think that it is a toss up between Georgia and Kentucky. I think obviously we know Alabama's got the West wrapped up in its entirety and likely the entire SEC. But outside of 1-2, I mean, Tennessee, Florida, South Carolina, Missouri, and Vandy, like, come on, man. Florida, how are you such a prestigious program, but you've fallen so far down? You're so far down. Pick it back up. You're getting all of these 4- and 5-star recruits. Pick it up, Florida. Like, finishing fourth is not something that you should be. Do you remember there was a time where if you didn't win the division, it was considered a failure? Like, to me, it's weird. If you've got a team like Miami, let's use Miami again for an example. If you got a team like Miami that got caught in the Ponzi scheme, that got caught where people were going, okay, like, obviously they're paying players to come here, which is now it's a legal thing to do, right? We understand why they are essentially rebuilding at this point now, right? Like, we understand that Miami is rebuilding because their program was essentially just completely blown up. Florida, there's no real reason why their system is just completely blown up. Like, there's no excuse for how they've fallen just like completely flat on their face. And it just, to me, it doesn't make sense. And we got to figure out what is wrong with the program? What is wrong with the coaching culture that is not translating to getting W's and competing in the college football playoffs and competing for national championships? Like, that's where we've got to figure it out as Florida Gators fans, is figuring out how we're going to come back to where we were. Maybe they surprise everybody. Maybe they surprise us and they finish second. You never know. College football is a very, outside of a couple of programs, like, Alabama's going to be good, and that Ohio State is usually going to be pretty formidable every single season. Like, that those two things are pretty much a certainty, right? Maybe Florida surprises us, but I hope that it's not a fluke. That's not what I want. I don't want it to be a fluke to where we're going, okay, so yeah, we're okay with. I don't want it to be we finished second place in the SEC East, and then the next season we're back down to fourth and fifth. Like I don't want that to be a thing. However, I do believe that college football is definitely one of those sports. It's a momentum thing as well, and especially when it comes to like recruiting classes. So if you do finish second overall in Florida, people are watching that going, okay, well, Florida was a team that was on my radar. That was a school that I was considering. That was a school that was considering me. Now that I know they've kind of gotten it together, maybe now I'm more interested in going to Florida. But outside of that, no flukes, man. Don't be fluky, and don't finish second and then fall back down. That's not what I want. One thing that I completely skipped over because I was seeing red when it came to the Florida Gators and the star recruits. I really wanted to talk about that because it's still a mind-boggling thing to me of how you can sign so many 4 and 5 star recruits over top of lesser value recruits, so to speak, and still just not figure out a way to turn it on. The AL East in the major leagues, of course, the Rays have now dropped 2 straight. And this is going to be a fantastic finish to the season as a baseball fan. As a Rays fan, it's going to be a nail biter. We know that the Rays have a lot of injuries. Injuries are kind of insurmountable right now for the Rays. They are 1.5 games up on the Mariners for the second wild card right now. Of course, they dropped back down into third place in the AL East. And look, there was a time where where we were talking about going, all right, you don't want to fall to fourth and possibly into fifth place. The AL East has gotten so close and so tight. I know right now, if you look at the standings, the Rays have lost 2, the Red Sox have lost 5, and the Orioles have lost, their last game. The Orioles and the Rays, of course, start their series today. But if I'm looking and going, okay, well, if the Rays happen to fall to fourth, here's where it's different is now we're starting to get a little separation. There have been 2 constants in the season for the AL East, and that's been the Yankees at the top and the Baltimore Orioles at the bottom. The Orioles are only a half game behind the Red Sox to taking over fourth. So let's just say hypothetically, the Orioles come into town and they beat the Rays today, and the Red Sox happen to lose tonight, the Orioles take over fourth, and the Red Sox are back in the cellar. This has been like the constant of the season. Second, third, and fourth have kind of been like interchangeable, but now we're starting to get a little separation. And when I mean a little separation, of course, the Rays and the Blue Jays are separated by a half game, but now we're looking at going, okay, so the Red Sox in fourth are 4.5 back of the Rays, which is huge. That's where you're starting to see these pullaways. So I feel like that should be the ultimate goal for the Rays this season is to look and figure out, okay, how can we make sure that if we don't finish second in the division, how we make sure that we keep a lead on the second wild card position in the American League. And that to me that's where you have to hone in and really figure it out. And this is where you go, okay, you know what? Shout out to Kevin Cash. He's you know what? They dropped 2 in a row. It is what it is. But he's basically keeping a revolving door of a healthy roster in contention to make the playoffs. And we say this all the time in any sport. Doesn't matter if it's baseball, football, basketball, hockey. It doesn't matter. All you have to do is get to the dance. And once you get to the dance, all bets are off. Things happen. Streaks continue. You've got to look at how we talked about this before. And this is like a big talking point for me is the New York Giants were a wild card the year they won the Super Bowl over the undefeated New England Patriots. The last Super Bowl they won, they were a wild card and they beat the undefeated New England Patriots. the Braves. Like there's team like when you look at these teams and you go, okay, so all you have to do is get to the dance. And I think that's where the focus for the Rays need to be is just making the playoffs. Don't worry about finishing second. Don't like I don't see a world where the Rays get extremely hot and the Yankees get extremely cold. Right? Like I don't think that whenever you look at the standings, whether it's on, MLB.com or ESPN or whatever, whenever you look at the standings, I don't think over the last 10 I have ever seen the Yankees have a losing record over the previous 10 games. It's always been at least a split or better. The Rays, unfortunately, we've seen more losses than wins over the course of last 10 game stretches, which I mean, it is what it is. There's been a lot of injuries. And no, this is not an excuse because you know that I am not a moral victory person. I don't believe in going, well, we had so many injuries. If you're a pro, you should be able to play at the professional level. There's the next man up mentality is there in all sports except for me, possibly basketball. Because the talent levels in basketball are vastly different. And you cannot expect a guy who you can't expect somebody like a Udonis Haslem who just does not play anymore and is on a team basically for respect. You can't expect the Udonis Haslem to come in and be able to keep up with Apollo Banchero. You can't expect that he's going to be as fast as Paulo Banchero is, especially at this ripe age that he's at, right? Like, so I think that the next man up mentality in basketball is not necessarily there. You can come off of the bench and you can kind of make some noise and you can do some cool things, but I definitely don't feel like the next man mentality in basketball is a thing. In baseball, it should be a thing because there's so many players on the field. There's so many players that everybody comes up to bat. So the next man up mentality definitely is a thing in baseball, especially when we tout how great our prospects are and our farm system is. We can't tout how great our prospects are, and then when they get to the league, go, yeah, well, I mean, they're they're not necessarily, they're not the starters. Then trade them like that. Go get Juan Soto. Take all of your prospects, throw them at the Nationals. Go and get Juan Soto. Rent him out for 2 years. He's got 2 years left on his deal. Rent him out. That's all you got to do. Then let him go. If we've got such a great farm system with the Rays, they should be able to come up and they should be able to translate over when you're talking about filling in and having that next man up mentality. Some of them do for sure. Absolutely. And this is not me knocking the Rays farm system. This is knocking the mentality of making excuses when we have to use our farm system and we have to use guys from Durham because we've got injuries and we can't overcome the injuries because our farm system, which is better than any other farm system in majors, isn't actually producing MLB stars. And that is just a weird dynamic when you actually take your fan hat off for a second and try to diagnose and figure out what exactly we are talking about, because it doesn't line up. That's not even like having your cake and eating it too. That's like literally talking in a circle going, yeah, we got the greatest prospects, the best farm system. Why don't they all translate? They should translate. Or is it just because it's the system? We talk a lot about systems in sports. The New England Patriots were a system for the longest time. You could plug and play players around Tom Brady, players around Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. You can plug and play players around John Cooper and Steven Stamkos in Tampa Bay. Look at Brandon Hagel. Brandon Hagel was a scoring threat in Chicago. Not so much in Tampa Bay because he didn't need to be a scoring threat. So you have all of these systems. The Rays have a decent system. I don't know how you make the system better, but I do know that if we stop touting and hanging on for dear life to these prospects and you go in and you say, hey, we're going to get Look, if you're trading away prospects to get a Juan Soto, that is a much different scenario than trading prospects to get an aged Nelson Cruz. And I know that trading players and making big splashes is not always, it's not really a Rays thing, but you can't compare the two. You can't say, well, they did it with Nelson Cruz. Yeah, but Nelson Cruz, you knew was going to be a rental for the remainder of the season. You knew that he was older. Juan Soto, you know you're going to have for 2 seasons. So you're not necessarily just renting him for the remainder of the season. He's going to be under contract. So you're able to look at the big picture and go, well, shit, we're going to have a lineup with Juan Soto, with Yandy Diaz, with Wander Franco, with possibly maybe Kevin Kiermaier. And I don't know if people really want to trade for an injured guy who's out for the remainder of the season, but you're looking at a roster of pretty damn good bats at the plate once you get these guys healthy, if you've got a Juan Soto on your team, and especially next season. If you've got Juan Soto on your team, and maybe this is part of the reason why the Rays are almost afraid to pull the trigger on this, would be if you've got Juan Soto and you've got the roster of hitters, you've got Yandy Diaz, you've got Wander Franco, and you've got G-Man Choi, for example, Randy Rosarina. I always botch that name. Gringo. Isaac Paredes. You know, if you've got this roster of talent around you, it's got to be World Series or bust, because the Red Sox are not going to be a formidable team next season. They don't know, unless they make some huge, crazy offseason changes, moves, trades, whatever. The Red Sox are not going to be formidable. The Orioles, who knows with the Orioles? The Yankees seem to go in spurts, right? So let's say the Yankees are probably going to win the AL East this season without a shadow of a doubt. Does that mean that they're going to win the AL East next season? Probably not. The Blue Jays, who knows with the Blue Jays, really? I mean, you know, they fire their skipper, now they've won 6. Who in the hell knows with the Blue Jays? But if you're telling me that I can have this Tampa Bay Rays team with who I've got on the mound, with Shane Baz returning next season, with Corey Kluber, with with Springs, with Beeks, with, of course, Sugar Shane, and you're telling me that I've got all of these fantastic pitchers in rotation, and now I've got all of these ridiculous bats, and you add Juan Soto to the... Oh, man. That's a World Series or bust, and maybe that is what scares the Rays away from making this trade. If you want to tell me that the Rays can't afford to get Juan Soto, I'm going to call BS. The Rays any baseball team can afford to get players, because players put asses in seats. When asses are in seats, revenue is generated. If you've got the home run derby champion from this season on your team, he's going to bring he's going to bring fans to the stands. He's going to bring fans to the Trop. It's not going to make the Trop any easier to get to. I totally get that. It's still going to be a pain in the ass to get to the Tropicana Field. But you are now have the home run derby champion. You've got a young superstar stud of a player on your roster. And it costs you nothing that the average fan can even see. Because the average fan doesn't care what's happening in Durham. The average fan is a Rays fan, period. The average fan does not care what's going on in Durham. And that's where it's different. Become a World Series or bust team. That's how it should be every season for any team. Unless you are literally out there and your GM and your skippers and your owners are out there saying, yeah, we're in a rebuild. Unless you're actively out there saying that you are in a rebuild, it should always be championship or bust. not let's hope we get far or bust, or let's hope we get far and be content. Like, it should not be that. But this AL East is shaping up to be absolutely insane for the remainder of the season. And that to me is what's exciting. That's where we got to go. Okay, Rays, maybe we shift our focus a little bit and say, if we happen to take Toronto back over, which is entirely possible because there's only a half game difference right now, maybe we take over and finish in second place, but the Rays can finish in third place, and they can finish in third place and make sure that they still make the playoffs, because that's all you have to do is get to the dance. Make it into October, make it into the ALDS, and just make it into the wild card, but just make sure that you can get into the playoffs. That should be the only thing that matters at this point right now. 100 seasons or 100 wins this season, not going to happen. It's physically not going to happen. Actually, I'm going to pull this up live here real quick because we've done this a lot. Let's see here. Baseball Reference. I love looking at this because it has a live playoff odds tracker. So if we look where like right now, okay, the best that the Rays could finish would be 94-68. That's the best. That, of course, means they ain't losing any games from here on out. Probably not going to happen, right? The worst they could finish would be 80-82. Where it stands currently right now is they are at a 71.7% chance of making the wild card, which is actually down over the last week, is down 7.5%. I love this tracker because I'm a stats guy. I'm an analyst guy. That's what I do. And that's, I think, why a lot of people want to yell at me and argue with me, is because I dissect things and I try to look for avenues and look for holes and methods and ways to make things happen. The Rays have almost 75% chance of making the wild card. They should be in good position to make the playoffs this season, despite all of the injuries. And I think that's where fans kind of get me wrong with the Rays, is I have got high expectations for this team. I don't think the Rays should be at a 71%. I don't care if they've got injuries. I feel like the Rays should be 80+% to make the playoffs every single season. And then once you start spending a little bit of money, now we're talking about a team that has a good system in place, a decent to good system in place. We have that in place, and then now we're starting to spend money and we're adding other players to it, because the Moneyball mentality is only going to get you so far. That's realistically where we are right now, is the Rays are playing Moneyball with a lot of these players, where they're saying, yeah, we don't really care for the name players. We don't really like to have the big money players. Well, they offered Wander Franco a lot. Yeah, he happened to pan out. Like, that's what it is. Get some solid players. Get people. Get these. What you have to do is, from a business standpoint, is you have to get players that fans want to see live. That's really what it boils down to. Is we can talk about the Trop as being, the Rays are good, but the Trop is empty, because who is really driving ticket sales? Right? Like, who's your box office smash hit? Why do you think The Rock is in every freaking movie that comes out? Not because he's a great actor, but because he's a box office draw. And that, to me, is where it stands out, is there's no real like box office draw when it comes to the Tampa Bay Rays. Sure, we've got Shane McClanahan, but he's not pitching every single game. And then we also add, the Kevin Cash pulling pitchers too early. Like, we add all of that extra stuff to it. But Shane McClanahan is not pitching every single game. Your pitcher can't be your sole box office draw. Miguel Cabrera puts asses in seats in Detroit because he's Miguel Cabrera. Like, we don't necessarily have that with the Tampa Bay Rays. Wander Franco, great player. He doesn't really resonate with the fans because of the language barrier. That's realistically where the issue lies there's a language barrier with him, right? Like David Ortiz could resonate with the fans because he could communicate with the fans, right? Like that's where you have to look at these different things. I don't know. I'm really excited that the Rays are going to make the postseason. It looks like they're going to make the postseason. They should not make the post. They should not miss it unless the wheels fall off of the wagon and then we're just completely, SOL. Speaking of making the postseason, we'll wrap up with this. The Orlando Magic, trying to figure out where the Orlando Magic are. I honestly believe that they should, realistically, the Orlando Magic should be competing to be in the play-in game. I think that for a team that won 22 games last season after they, basically mortgaged the farm, Vucevic was gone, Aaron Gordon was gone. Like once you said, okay, we're going to move these guys, we're going to go young, we're going to try to build from the ground up. Some of these guys didn't pan out. Markelle Fultz didn't really pan out when he was in Philly. Like we're going to take these guys, we're going to see what we've got. We're going to keep Terrence Ross on the roster, so we've got the veteran presence. Then we're going to add Paulo Banchero. So you have to look at it. I think the thing for me is that to make the play-in game, and like I said, that's a realistic expectation. Now, Corey says that if they're healthy, they'll make the playoffs easily. I don't want to say easily. I do think that the East is much easier to make the playoffs than the West. But I want to have my expectations realistic, right? Like Paulo Banchero, I think, is definitely going to be a vocal leader of this team in his rookie season. I think he's going to be part of the reason why this team is so successful. We saw a small sample size in summer league, but we saw a young talent become a floor general over his teammates in summer league. And he did it in a way that was like uplifting and positive to where it was like rallying the troops, right? So you plug him in, Markelle Fultz starts playing well. Jalen Suggs turns it like there's a lot of young talent. Mo Bamba, maybe the Bowl experiment pans out a little bit this season as well. Like there's a lot of positive outlook for the Magic this season. I would still love to see them pair Donovan Mitchell somehow with Paulo Banchero. I don't think that's going to happen, and I'm content with it. But I really think that this young team can surprise some people, and maybe they can finish better than the play-in contention. But I think realistically, if they don't make the play-in game, I would consider this season a failure. They're not division winning talent yet. I think that they could start the season early on very hot because they are younger. They could surprise a lot of teams. Coaches could not, and players could kind of overlook the Orlando Magic and go, yeah, well, they only had 22 wins last season. And kind of like that, it's a night off mentality. I don't care what players actually say on like social media and interviews and stuff. That is a real thing. Is all right, I don't have to go 100% tonight because this team last year was trash. I don't have to do, I can roll probably 70% tonight and we'll still come out on top. You see that all the time with a lot of these guys, James Harden, Kevin Durant, like a lot of these superstar players do that. They won't tell you they do that, but you can legitimately see that they act, this is how they are. So I think the Orlando Magic will definitely surprise some teams this season, especially early on, until teams start taking notice, because I think that Paulo Banchero, from what we saw in the summer league, is, in my opinion, is already the favorite to win Rookie of the Year. I know it's easy to say, well, he was number 1 overall, he should. That's not always the case, though. Number 1 overall doesn't always win Rookie of the Year. Michael Olowokandi didn't win Rookie of the Year. Michael Olowokandi was trash. Kwame Brown didn't win Rookie of the Year. There's so many number 1 overall picks that just have not panned out, right? Like, it's a thing. That's why I'm always Basketball, I think, is different when it comes to the draft, right? We've talked about this before. And my stance, like, if you're in a team sport where one player can't truly make a difference like he can in the NBA, like football, trade your draft picks away, get proven, known commodities. Basketball is a little more difficult because you don't know how this proven commodity is going to fit into your system. Like, we wouldn't know how Donovan Mitchell would actually be able to fit in with, like, I would assume, Wendell Carter would be on the chopping block if they were to trade for Donovan Mitchell. I'm okay throwing Jonathan Isaac out there. Don't care about Jonathan Isaac anymore. It's been 2 years, out of sight, out of mind, whatever. He's here, so do I hope he comes back and turns it on and kills it this season? Absolutely. He's already here. But he's not the savior. Everybody keeps talking about Jonathan Isaac is the savior. Once he's healthy, watch out. Once he's healthy, watch out. I told you, I think it was last Friday or Thursday. I literally showed you his comparisons against not other good people in his position who are better than him in every metric, every measurable metric. Blocks, sure. He was in contention for defensive player of the year by who? Like 13 games into the season? Oh, he was in contention to be defensive player of the year. Cool. A fifth of the way through the season, he was great. Like, I don't believe that he's going to be a savior for this team. Could he help them? Yes, absolutely. Will he be better than he was before? Who the hell knows? It's been 2 years. It's been 2 years of this guy, realistically, from an outside perspective, that has been disconnected from the game of basketball. Mentally just disconnected from a game from basketball. I said this before last week. If you are not a basketball fan and you happen to catch like an interview of Jonathan Isaac about his book and you went to his social media page, you'd have no idea that he was a basketball player. There's nothing NBA related on his social media accounts at all, outside of a 2-year-old hashtag in his Twitter profile. That's it. So the guy's disconnected. For me, he's been disconnected from the game for 2 seasons. It's easy to go, hey, nobody's working harder than me. I'm working hard in the gym. You're not posting anything. Leonard Fournette, people fat shame Leonard Fournette coming in. Oh, he's coming into training camp 260 pounds. He's posting workout videos left and right outside of, the picture of his face on a fat guy's body. Like, he's posting videos in the gym, killing it. Saquon Barkley coming back from injury, posting videos, killing it. Jonathan Isaac, I wrote a book. I only want to talk about my book. I only want to sell my book. Hey, my link, it's not to the Orlando Magic page. It's not to my website. It's to my Amazon page for you to buy my book. Like, that's all that he cares about, which is fine. But at some point, you got to go, okay, it's the end of July. Basketball season starts in October. Preseason's coming up. Training camp is coming up. At some point, I have to start shifting my focus to basketball. I can literally sit here and look at my camera and say, I am training to be the next UFC middleweight champion. And none of you would believe me, right? Why do we believe Jonathan Isaac when he says I'm in the gym? He's not showing us that. If I was showing you that I am rolling on the ground, practicing Brazilian jiu-jitsu, if I'm showing you that I'm doing these things, it's different. It's easy to say something. It's another thing to show something. All I want you to do is show me, man. Show me that you're in the gym, lifting weights. Show me that you're in the gym, running drills, doing suicides, shit, like high school stuff. Like, that's what I want to see from Jonathan Isaac. And I think fans are giving him, and I know Corey is not a big Jonathan Isaac guy either, but this is what I want to see from Jonathan Isaac. I want to see you showing me that you care about basketball. I want to see you showing me that you care about your status on this team and you care about where you are in the league. You're not just trying to be the next woke athlete. That's what I want to see. You can use your platform for so much. You're using your platform for a lot of stuff right now. You're using your platform for to promote the book you wrote. You're using your platform to be this. So like, uh that's what I want to see. Show me that you are invested in the game. That's all I care about. I don't look for me. If you want to talk about why I stand, why my all of my teammates, I I don't watch sports for that. If guys take a knee during the anthem, doesn't bother me. They stand during the anthem, don't care. Like I don't watch. The only sport I watch to hear the national anthem is the Tampa Bay Lightning because Sonia is a freaking legend and I love that woman to death and she is an amazing human being. That's the only sport that I care about the national anthem for. That and when, like Lillian Garcia back in the day for WWE would sing the national anthem. I think those are the only two times that I really care, outside of like the special events of like the Super Bowl and stuff like that. I don't care that you stand. I don't care that you sit. I don't care that that's not why I'm here. I care about how you're going to perform on the court or on the field. That's what I care about. And to me, right now, where you stand, Jonathan Isaac, is that you don't care about the sport of basketball. You care about the art of selling books. You care about trying to make the New York Times best-selling author list, which I don't think is a difficult thing to do anymore because it seems like every author is a New York Times best-selling author now. Every book is a best-selling book. I don't know what the requirements are for that either. But regardless of the fact, Jonathan Isaac, I don't believe that he is the savior for this Orlando Magic team, but I do believe that should he come back healthy, he will definitely help this team. So we'll see. And I will leave you with this. Of course, we are going to do this all over again tomorrow and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. I will leave you with this. Follow us on all the social media platforms. Just search for the Channelside Sports Network. If you are watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, hit the notification, hop in the chat. We try to get the chat bumping over here. Appreciate Corey tuning in today. We are going to be exclusive to YouTube at the beginning of August. So if you're watching this on Facebook, or you're watching it on Twitter, we appreciate it. I appreciate it. But we are going to be exclusive to YouTube starting at the beginning of August. So if you are not subscribed on YouTube and you're not watching on YouTube, you're going to miss. You're not going to be able to jump in the chat. You're not going to be able to listen to the show live. You watch the replay, sure, but the replays just kind of hit differently. They're not the same. But we will leave you with this. Triple H, and this is courtesy of our guys, Corey over at False Finish. Triple H has taken over as the head of creative for the WWE. Holy crap. That's a huge announcement. Not only are they TV 14 again, Triple H is taking over as head of creative. I really think that the WWE is it's going to be exciting. If you were one of those fans that was kind of back and forth, kind of like me, where you're like, I love wrestling. I grew up with wrestling, but I'm not necessarily like really invested in it any longer. Now you've got a reason to be invested in it a whole hell of a lot longer. I am Danny. This is Channelside in the Morning live on the Channelside Sports Network. Thank you, everybody who tuned in. Thank you, Corey, for hopping in the chat today and mixing it up with me. We will be back to do it all over again tomorrow, 8 a.m. Evan will be in the house with me. So I won't just be ranting, but it's fun. To me, it's fun regardless. I like doing this. I hope you guys like it too. This was your first time tuning in. There's a lot of churn. I saw a lot of people coming in, coming out. I don't see who's coming in and coming out, but if this was your first time tuning in, thank you. I hope you enjoyed the show. Do it all over again tomorrow. I'm Danny. This is Channelside in the Morning.